that is the first thing that we have to address. Because if you're walking around with this impact force of your body always being pulled into your injury, I can go and try and unlock anything I want. But if you still have that pattern of being forced to the side, you're just going to fall back into that old pattern.
Are you ready to transform your health journey? Welcome to the Holistic Podcast, where science meets holistic wellness to help you take control of your health. I'm Lianne Balazsi, an osteopath with a background in psychology, athletic therapy, and occupational therapy, here to guide you through practical ways to feel your best without relying solely on doctor visits or prescriptions. Join me each week for deep dives, expert insights, and real-life wellness experiments as we explore the powerful connection between body and mind. Whether you're new to holistic health or just looking for fresh perspectives, you're in the right place. Let's start unlocking your healthiest, happiest self together. This is the Holistic Podcast. Before we dive in, a quick reminder. I'm an osteopath, not a medical doctor, and this podcast is for informational purposes only. The content shared here is based on my personal experience in education in health and holistic wellness. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have about your own particular situation and your health. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's get on with the show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Holistic Podcast. Last week, we talked about all the origins of osteopathy, which is my field of expertise. And I was reflecting back after recording the episode and thinking, did I miss anything? Is there any details that people may want to know a bit more about? And actually, I did come up with a few. So I figured this episode could be all about just diving a little more deeper into different philosophies that the osteopath goes through when they're assessing and addressing issues within their clients, and to get a better understanding of what's going through our heads when we are going through a session with you. Funny enough, in the first episode, as I re-listened to it, I realized I gloated a lot about how I figured out how to explain osteopathy, but I never actually gave a brief definition of what I believe it truly is. I kind of dove right into all the wonderful things it does. I figured I would clarify that today. So osteopathy is actually a very global manual therapy. We definitely look at the person from the whole perspective. And the goal of doing that is to really get to the root cause of your issues. So we try to define whether your complaints, so for example, a sore knee, is actually the root cause. So did you actually injure your knee through a sports injury or another kind of trauma to your knee? Or is it actually a compensation, therefore a result of something else going on in your body, and your knee is simply sounding off the alarm bells to tell you that something is actually wrong? And it's the osteopath's job to figure out which one it actually is in order to get to the bottom of your root cause issue. And hopefully if we do our job right and find out what's really happening for the reason of your pain, whether your pain is a compensation or a direct cause, we hopefully resolve it for you. So that's in a nutshell what really osteopathy is. It goes a lot more deeper with lots of layers to it. I'm hoping today what I can do is just give you another insight into what an osteopath is processing through their brains as they're going through all these levels of assessment with you. So an osteopath really does see the human body through 7 different systems within the body. So we see the body as having 7 systems. I'll name them all now, and then I'll kind of break them down one by one. So one of the first systems the osteopath looks at is the craniosacral system. The second is fascia. The third is the musculoskeletal system. Fourth is the fluid system. Fifth is the pressure system. Sixth is the central chain. And the 7th is the energetic field. So that's a lot of different systems to look through, but it's not necessarily that the human body is just one and nothing else. It's more we simultaneously have all of these systems working within ourselves, and the osteopath chooses to go with one specific frame in order to really address the issue. So sometimes you could have, for example, that knee pain, but it could be a problem in your musculoskeletal system where you could be having an actual injury to your knee, and then you have a ligament tear, which then brings instability to your joint and then makes your muscles have to tense up to kind of compensate. But it can also be an issue because of a fascia system. So fascia system might express more of an actual compensation. So, for example, if you have an issue more in your hip, it could be pulling on different fascia that connects all along the body, then has attachments on the knee, and you feel the pull on the knee, but it's actually the fascia that's signaling to you that there's an issue somewhere else. So just to give you a brief example, how about we break down one by one each one of these systems so you can have a better idea of where we're coming from. So let's start with the first one, the craniosacral system. Now, I imagine some of you have heard about craniosacral therapy, and that's usually where the philosophy is that the head, the cranium, is actually connected down the spinal cord all the way to the sacrum. The sacrum is a nice triangular almost type of bone right in your lower back. And there's a lot of different connections that make this one big functional unit. And the osteopath really believes that if this system is not intact, all the work that we do is not going to be optimal. So we don't only have connections of this whole system through the bones themselves that make the spinal cord, there's also tissue within the spinal cord called the dura mater, which actually is a whole tube that protects as a very rigid tissue that protects your central nervous system within your spine. So the osteopath believes that for everything to function well, for every function in your body, you need to have your spine well aligned in order to have less tension on your central nervous system through pulling on the different attachments that the dura mater has along the path. So sometimes it actually results in, yes, there may be a vertebrae that is off and we have to go and make sure we can realign that vertebrae, but it can also be, for example, if you've suffered from a concussion and you have an instability in your neck, that we have to go and make sure that there's actual proper realignment in your neck and base of skull in order to help relieve that tension. So the trick here is that the dura mater is actually a very inelastic tissue. It is set to really envelop your spinal cord, so your central nervous system, but it's not very flexible. It moves, but it's not meant to be super stretchy. So once a vertebrae is off, or anything along that spinal chain is off, you're putting extra tension on the dura mater as well. So then it creates even less flexibility, less mobility in your spine, just from one thing possibly that could be off. It's really a cascade of events once you start getting some deviations in your alignment. Next one is the musculoskeletal system. So that one sounds pretty straightforward. Musculoskeletum is your bones and muscles, and this counts outside of the spinal cord. It can include the spinal cord, but it's really the whole system. So all the bones in your body, the ligaments, and all the muscle attachments. So we take this more into perspective, especially when it comes to athletic injuries, for example. So someone dislocates their shoulder, for example, and obviously they may have to go see a doctor, get their shoulder reset. But then there's all types of instabilities that might be there in your shoulder that your physiotherapist might help you regain your strength in. But then we have to go and look on a deeper level of if the bone is actually optimally back aligned in its joint capsule. Because if it is not, then your muscles are going to tense up more, your fascia is going to be pulling on everything, and it's going to create instabilities in your upper thoracic area, which can pull into your whole body. And this is actually a nice segue into the fascial system, because your fascia system, I would like you to imagine like you're a little kid who's wearing a onesie pajama. That's basically what it's like for your fascia system. It is so interconnected. It covers your whole body to the point that if you get one spot, so say in your shoulder, you have one spot where either there was a very big inflammation that's pulling on the fascia there, or you have a cut from a surgery, everything ends up pulling on the shirt and it ends up affecting all the way into different fascial chains in your body. It can go across your body in one way. It can go diagonally across down to your hips. It can go along parallel to the same hip. It can pull up into your neck and head. The fascia is really a big, big factor in what we work with. And more often than not, when people come to me with complaints for aches and pains, most of the time, it's because it's a compensation that the fascia is pulling on that zone, and I'm actually working other areas. And I'm not going to lie, people get pretty frustrated because they go, why aren't you touching my shoulder, for example? I'm like, well, because the shoulder has so many different links to it via the fascial system. When I go to assess the shoulder, it's actually fine. But the shoulder is being pulled up to your neck, for example. So we have to go and address the neck first in order to help release your shoulder afterwards. So I get it can be hard to wrap your head around that sometimes when you're in session, but it's actually really, really important in order to get long-term effects. So the next system is the fluid system. So that takes into account your lymphatic system, your circulation, and just how everything is draining, how everything in your body is circulating. So yeah, it comes back a bit to your structure, like we say in the philosophy of osteopathy. One of the main things is the role of the artery is supreme. So if a structure is blocked, it's going to affect your liquid system. It's going to affect how your circulation is moving. So sometimes we have to take into consideration, okay, is it the blockage that's making the circulation not optimal? Or is there actually something default in the circulation of lymphatic drainage or what have you? So we do have to take into consideration how your liquid is circulating. Oftentimes, these are people who have excess swelling, they have slow lymphatic drainage, and we have techniques that help, and we send you home with different techniques that you can try and help do some lymphatic drainage on your own to help optimize after a session. So moving on to the pressure system. The pressure system is another word for your diaphragm. You don't only have one diaphragm in your body. You have your thoracic diaphragm, which is one of the biggest ones and definitely an important one. But we actually have many more diaphragms than that help push the fluid system and keep air pressure properly balanced. So say your thoracic diaphragm is very tense, it might actually keep liquid pressure lower in your abdomen or even down into your legs and can help pool a bit of excess fluid. So I'm not saying all people are like this, but some people, if they have a very tense diaphragm, say for stress and they're not breathing properly, they might not getting a nice pump effect in order to help drain their lymphatic system. So we don't only have the thoracic diaphragm, we also have one at the base of your skull. It's called the tentorium cerebelli. And then we have your plantar fascia in your feet, and that helps just create a little rebound effect to help boost things upwards. And we also have the pelvic floor. And the pelvic floor is definitely a very strong muscular system, but it actually has to be strong enough to hold all your pelvic organs. This definitely isn't my whole level of expertise, but a lot of pelvic physios will talk to you about how if you don't have a strong pelvic floor, that's what can lead to organ prolapse. That's when like your organs start kind of drooping a bit and can create urinary issues or even elimination issues. So ideally, to have all these pressure systems, so all these diaphragms intact and functioning, can really help to just balance out circulation and even proper posture. The next system is the central chain. The central chain is not necessarily a zone that you're going to feel directly in your body. It's not like one big post that's within you, but it is points of reference where there should be balance in your body. So this is where we get a little more into the fine-tuned feeling that an osteopath will have, but it's really to check certain zones within the 3D body of if they're all moving properly, they should create a nice balance point in the middle of that disc, of that surface of the person. Imagine you're going through a CT scan. So they scan you actually from the top all the way down your body, and it'll actually give you slices of what your body looks like. I actually used to work in a lab analyzing CT scans. It was actually really cool, but it really helped me to understand and visualize the central chain, because it's as if you take one of those slices at a certain level, and it should be that in that whole disc that you're looking at, the balance point is in the middle. But for some people, if there's tensions, if there's pulling from the fascia, if you have scar tissue, if you have muscle tension that's really too strong, your actual central point is going to be a bit different. So an osteopath tries to take a very global palpation of your whole one disc area and tries to feel, is it centered, or am I feeling more pull on one hand versus the other? And ideally, when you have your really big central points that are nice and balanced, it really gives us a signal that the body has less pressure in other areas so that everything can flow nicely. And the final one, it's a little bit more of a controversial one because it depends on your beliefs and it's a little more out there. But the final system is the energetic field. So there are some who claim that they have energetic touch. So they feel someone's energy in their hands. I don't necessarily want to give an opinion on this. I find it super fascinating. And I think it's cool when you go to a treatment or you go to a session with an osteopath and they tell you that they're feeling stuff that's off in your energetic field. But it can be a little woo-woo. And there's not always much that you can feel when that's happening. But the osteopath might be super sensitive to it. And so what they're really trying to see is if your energetic field is actually balanced or is it distorted. To be honest, I'm not someone who uses a lot of this kind of practice. The only times it's actually happened where I have felt a need to do it usually is the person who comes to see me is their body is screaming that they need that. Like you go try to touch them physically in order to address an issue and they can barely stand your touch because they're so sensitive. So that's where I've actually done this kind of work. But am I an expert in this kind of work? No. I would usually recommend people go consult a Reiki master. They usually have more experience with working in energetic fields. I have been to some in my life. I have done a training in it. It's super interesting, but it's not what everybody needs all the time. So I feel like when you start working with people's energies, you have to be very careful and you have to know when it might not be the right thing to do, even if that might be what you feel like doing as a therapist. So it's really about taking a step back and assessing everything else first, because usually, most of the time, the energetic field might be off because of the structure of the body and not the other way around. It's very hard to go starting from an energetic field to then go and get to the body unless their body really, really calls for that prerequisite first. So I hope that clarifies a little bit all the different systems that the osteopath is looking at within your body when you go see them in a session. Personally, I have ones that I use more than others. Everyone, and depending on who you go see, everyone's going to have a bit of their feeling that they're more comfortable with. Some are going to be more comfortable in the liquids. Some are going to be more comfortable, like I said, in the energetics. Personally, because of my background in athletic therapy, where I did a lot of hands-on therapy, my comfort zone has always been more in the musculoskeletal system, in the fascia, and also in the craniosacral system. Of course, I work with all of them on a certain level, but because they all are really interconnected. But when I'm using my focus in my assessment, personally, those are the three that are usually my go-to.
Quick pause for a second. I just wanted to take a moment to say if this material is resonating with you, I would love for you to come and join my free community over on School. That's skool.com. The group I have is called Ask the Osteopath, and we talk about all different types of topics around your health and well-being. Yes, there's foundations in osteopathy, but we keep it to a broader range all around holistic health and wellness in order to optimize your everyday well-being. So if this sounds like a place you'd like to be, I invite you to go to school.com/osteo. And now, back to the episode.
So now that we got that clear, we should take a look at what actually is the first order priority, because it's starting to sound a little complicated, and I completely understand that. I'm trying to condense about 7 years of schooling into 2 podcast episodes. So I definitely get that it's not the most straightforward material, but moving on. So once we take into consideration all of these systems, what do we do with it? There's actually an order of priority of what type of blockages we have to address first. Some of the most important ones, like the top three, I'll give you the top three that we absolutely have to address. You come to my office for the first time ever, I'm ruling out these three, and then if those three are good, then we'll move on to the actual more detailed demands of your appointment. First one is impact forces. So I do get a lot of athletes in my practice, and if I don't have athletes, there's usually someone who's been in a car accident or had a bad fall, something where there is like a blunt force that's shoved their body in a certain way to the point where they had a traumatic effect. So like I said, usually like a car accident or an ex-football player who got knocked too many times. Usually I'll have these people do a specific test, and once they do it, I can just see they can't stand still. You can even try it for yourself. You basically stand up, you stick your feet together, and you stand tall, and then you close your eyes. And usually we'll wait to see if you're going to wobble or even if you're going to fall over. Now, I'm someone who has suffered from a couple of concussions in my life, a nice history of high-impact sports. And when I used to do this test when I first started my osteopathy journey, I would actually stand, close my eyes, and I would fall to my right side. If I didn't stop and separate my feet to catch myself, I'd legit fall down. It took me quite a bit of time to rebuild to just being centered in my body, but it was just showing me how I had suffered a few blunt forces that was pushing me to my right side. And when I look back, I had a bad injury when back in my ultimate frisbee days, where someone actually knocked me from my left side and I fell onto my right. And that's what actually made me hit my head and give me a concussion, just to name one. So once we assess that, that is the first thing that we have to address. Because if you're walking around with this impact force of your body always being pulled into your injury, I can go and try and unlock anything I want. But if you still have that pattern of being forced to the side, you're just going to fall back into that old pattern. So that's always step number one. Another one that is very important is scar tissue. So whether most of the time you've had a surgery. So some people, it can be a really bad scrape, but that's usually more of a superficial scar. I'm talking like you're a woman who had C-sections. And of course, like that's what you had to do to have your baby. No judgment here. It's not the end of the world, but it can be problematic for your posture of your pelvis down the line because the scar tissue just doesn't go through your skin. It goes all the way down, layer by layer, multiple layers of your epidermis, all the way down fascia, muscle, to your uterine lining, down to where they went to get baby. So your scar tissue actually looks like a nice, of course, people will say, oh no, it's a beautiful, nice scar because, doctors do amazing things these days. The scars are even smaller. They don't look as intense as, say, someone who had a C-section in the 1950s. But it still has a pattern of reaching all the way down to your uterus. So just like I was talking about this onesie pajama earlier, where you have this pull that goes into your shoulder and pulls on everything, imagine when you have one that goes all the way down into your uterine area and how it can pull on multiple layers of fascia down into that zone. So what actually happens a lot with women who've had C-sections is that they have this pull that goes to their uterus after having a C-section, and it pulls all the way down into their neck. So it's like a whole layer of fascia that comes and pulls you down. So there are women who actually come see me and they just say, my neck hurts. And if I just kept it simple, if I just said, okay, I'm going to check your neck. I'm going to see if there's any vertebrae off. I'm going to stretch your muscles out in your neck. And there you go. There's your appointment. Do you think they're going to actually have any relief? Well, I hope you answered no, because that will make them feel good for about 2 days. They might be like, oh yeah, I got a nice stretch. I feel so good. Osteo's great. But then 2 days later, they're basically going to go back to feeling how they were, and they will not have long-term relief. So if I miss that very important detail in the very first appointment with my client, that they had a C-section. I just missed a very big piece of the puzzle of why your neck hurts. So are you starting to see how it really is important to get this whole picture idea in order to remove the layers of what's going on? I really often explain to people that human beings are like onions, just like how Shrek will say ogres are like onions. Human beings are like onions too. But us, I see it as layers of an onion with your patterns. So imagine you have a force of impact in one layer, then you have a C-section scar in another layer, and then you have a vertebrae that's off in a third layer. And you're coming to me explaining to me that your back hurts because of a vertebrae that's off, but you have a C-section history and also a force of impact. I can't dig to that layer of the vertebrae being off until I address the force of impact in the first outer layer, then the C-section in the second layer, then I can go to the vertebrae. So I hope that paints a better picture of where we're going with this in our process. So the third thing we really look at, it's actually, we call these compactions or compressions. I learned my stuff in French. So there's compression, like compression, but there was actually a more severe term called compaction. So it's really compacted, like together. It basically sounds like two bones are not just compressed together, squishing, but they're actually just stuck together and the joint space is actually reduced. So they kind of work together like a unit instead of dissociating a bit how they're supposed to in 3D. And we're talking about millimeters here. I think I need to talk about how our jargon in osteopathy can sometimes sound really dramatic. So when I'm telling someone sometimes, oh yeah, you have a compaction in your upper vertebrae here, in their neck, they might say, oh my God, what does that mean? Do I have a herniated disc? And that's where I always have to catch myself, take a step back and go, no, okay. What we say sometimes when something's compressed, it sounds really intense, but it's not actually to the same level of severity as, say, if you go to a medical doctor, you get an MRI or an X-ray and they go, yeah, your vertebrae are compressed and you have a herniated disc. We're talking more on a level of function. So when I say, oh yeah, it feels compacted or compressed, it's actually more severe jargon, but to make you visualize functionally what's happening. So you go get an X-ray, everything's fine. The doctor would even say there's nothing wrong with you. There's no compression in your vertebrae. It's more when I go to test the physical movement between them, there should be some slight dissociation. It could be very, very minimal. But if it just feels like one solid unit, that shows that there's already a dysfunction happening. It doesn't mean you have a compressed disc. It doesn't mean you have even osteoarthritis in the zone, but it shows there's a loss of function. And it could be, I'm not saying it can lead to that, but in some cases, if it stays compressed like that for too long, it may over time develop more rubbing and discomfort that we want to avoid. So I hope I clarified that the way I talk sometimes can sound intense, but we're talking about a value of millimeters here. But these millimeters count. These millimeters do actually have an effect on how you perceive your pain, how you affect your proprioception, and how you can actually balance out in your body. So I hope that this crash course in osteopathy that's been over the past 2 episodes actually helps clarify a bit of what they do, what they're looking for, and how they can help you. If this is really resonating with you and you feel like you would like to go see an osteopath, I will be honest, in the United States, I don't believe that osteopaths practice a lot anymore. So if anyone out there in the United States practices the manual therapy part of osteopathy, I would love for you to reach out to me so that I can actually help refer my clients who are from the States to you. Because it looks like when you look at the history of osteopathy, yes, it started in the US, but in the United States, osteopathy, as it grew to Europe, and the philosophy was maintained in Europe about keeping it a manual therapy, in the US, where it started, it began to evolve and co-create with traditional Western medicine. So When you look at someone with a DO today in the United States, they're actually surgeons, they're ophthalmologists, they're working in the medical field. So it's not a bad thing. It's just the way osteopathy's evolved in the USA. So they still learn and respect the manual therapy aspect, but not everyone continues to practice the manual therapy once they go to specialize more in the traditional medical field. And if you are interested in consulting with an osteopath in Canada, I can definitely link in the show notes resources where you can consult an osteopath in your area. There are definitely a wide range of qualified individuals who will be happy to see you. And if you're still on the fence, if you don't know if you actually want to go see an osteopath, or if you're not sure if it's the right fit for you, I did create a quiz. It's called Is Osteopathy Right for You? And I will also link that in the show notes so that you can go and explore for yourself to see if it's a good option. But it's possible that the quiz will actually lead you more into going to see a physiotherapist, or even that maybe you should see your medical doctor first. It's always good to see your medical doctor first before you start any other treatment. I will definitely vouch for that. But if you've already been to the doctor and you're still trying to find solutions, take the quiz and see if it can help you out. All right? Well, thank you so much for listening this week. It's been a pleasure to help clarify a little bit of what I do for work. And I will catch you guys next week with a whole new episode. Take care.
Thank you for being part of today's episode of the Holistish podcast. Ready to take your wellness journey further? Visit Holistish, that's holistic with an SH at the end, .com, to access our latest resources and wellness tools designed to support your holistic health journey. For holistic health inspiration and a behind-the-scenes look at integrating traditional wisdom with modern wellness, join our growing community on Instagram at the.holistish. If today's episode resonated with you, subscribe so that you never miss out on our weekly episodes, and leave a quick review to help other wellness seekers find us. Until next time, stay curious, stay balanced, and keep exploring what works best for your unique body and mind. Your health journey matters, and I'll meet you right back here next week.